Ready check, ready check.
Welcome one and welcome all to Project Endurance Season 5, the fourth round of this 2024 championship. It's qualifying night for the 12 hours of COTA right here at the Circuit of the Americas. What a fantastic track this is for both Grand Prix racing and endurance racing. The drivers are going to be facing up against a lot of challenges tonight as they try to maximize lap times and get ready for the race that is happening tomorrow. You'll see the schedule right up there tomorrow on the 8th of June. 11 o'clock Central European summertime is when our broadcast is going to be starting. We're going to have GT3 qualifying first up, and it's going to be followed by a 25-minute session for the hypercar class, and then for the first time in a non-24-hour Project Endurance event, we'll have a Hyperpole session where the top 5 teams from each class will get one single lap each to set their final positions on the grid. I'm Reese Gardner, going to be taking you through this one solo here tonight. Slavomir Mishkovsky is on the buttons, producing behind the scenes and bringing you these live pictures. GT3 qualifying is currently on, and at the moment we're waiting to see those first times come down here for the GT3 class. An awful lot of track limits usage will be dissected here, with the curbs being the track limits where they are seen, and everywhere else there aren't curbs. It's the white line that is the edge of the track. So there's going to be a lot of usage of those curbs, particularly by these GT3 cars on board with the 246 Race Spot Academy car, which currently holds the fastest time in GT3. The 246 being driven by Bartolomej. Unfortunately, in the sheet I've been given, I can't see the end of his last name. Bromgic, I think, if I'm pronouncing that right. I'm very sorry if I'm not Slavomir. Yeah, feeding me the information behind the scenes. Shout out to Slavomir there. Yeah, let's see if he can improve here on his... well, he's currently 1.4 seconds off the fastest time now, but down the long back straight here at Circuit of the Americas, lots of opportunity to both gain and lose time. FNLRT currently the quickest of them all at the moment. Cubic System 6/10 behind, coming into the very slow stadium section towards the end of the lap. This is a difficult place for GT3s to go through. They do rely on mechanical grip a little little bit more than the prototype class does, so this section is particularly difficult, though they do sometimes have an easier time of it than the prototypes that tend to perform better in the faster corners. We'll see the prototypes coming out on track later on, as I mentioned, but coming up towards the end of the lap, that first flurry of lap times is looking good at the moment. The number 1 Apex 1 entry still with no time on the board, and it looks like the Race Spot Academy car will be attempting another qualifying lap. So Bromchik is making his way then to the start-finish line, and wasn't an improvement on that particular lap, but we'll wait and see. The Squadra Corsa Overcrest car of Marek Jagietto is a Lamborghini in an ocean of Mercedes. There are 3 Lamborghinis and 2 Lexuses in this GT3 field for the 6 hours of COTA. The rest of them all driving the Mercedes AMG GT3. Kamil Pachansky in the Kishita Mafia 775 entry is one of those drivers who will be looking for some big moves here in the race. The lower qualifying, the slower of the 2 Lexuses in pre-event practice. Let's see then. The Mercedes make their way through. Already seeing some damage on the windscreen of the Brawn GP Mercedes there. It looks like they've had a problem somewhere along the line, so they'll evidently be wanting to make their way to the pits very shortly. Oscar Tomala in the PMO Endurance Team Red entry, making his way into turn 1. And this team 2 seconds off the current pole time. Amazing to see the run through turn 1 here at this circuit, and this flowing S's section at the start of the lap, very difficult to get right in a GT3 as they don't have very much grip to spare through those fast corners. Well, Simon Gorka in the Cubic System Mercedes, he'll be happy with his performance so far. 6/10 currently off provisional pole position in the GT3 class. And you got to remember, you're keeping an eye on those top 5 positions. Currently, the margin to get into the top 5 and thus get yourself a ticket into the Hyperpole session, it's only a matter of less than a 1/10 of a second between the Motor Reporter 24.pl Lexus and the Squadra Corsa Overcrest number 20. But let's see what the Cubic System machine does as they make their way through the final sector of the circuit, keeping it within track limits, which is nice to see. But there's a few more corners here to take advantage of, and just a little bit of oversteer there for the number 31. The traction control evidently kicking in there to help the driver in question, but they'll decide to jump into the pits at the end of that lap. They are done for the time being. They'll come back out very shortly, I'm sure. Speaking of that 5th place driver, Marek Paluk in the Motor Reporter Lexus. This is one of my favorite liveries in the Project Endurance field. Always good to see the 996 out there. But coming up to the end of the lap now, very difficult to get it done through the final couple of corners, and it looks like it might have just exceeded track limits on the exit of that penultimate corner. To the final corners they come, and up to P3 on that lap, but I don't know if race control is going to allow that lap to stand. It looked like he did put a couple of wheels outside the red and white curbs. We'll have to wait and see. Well, Wojciech Niewegłowski in the AOT Turtle Beach Mercedes. This is another one of those cars that's very fast in this series, not to mention the Royal Racing.pl Lamborghini that we saw flash up on the screen for a moment there. The Rivals Racing Team car in 8th place now for the driver of Daniel Schmierlach. This is I'm just looking at how the suspension tackles the curbs here. This is a Formula 1 circuit, so it's got those nice flat curbs, but they do still have some profile to them, and that can mess with the suspension of the GT3s somewhat. That 666 Royal Racing.pl Lamborghini on board with Wojciech at the wheel of the car. Through the final corner he comes, winds on a lot of steering lock there, maybe dealing with some understeer at the final corner, and across the start-finish line they will come to begin another lap. There want to try and break into the top 10, ideally into the top 5. Currently, the gap to get into the top 5 standing at about 1.2 seconds. So there's a lot of time to be made up for a lot of these teams. There's 23 of our GT3 class that have set times as of right now, with 19 minutes to go in the GT3 session. They get 30 minutes, do these cars, and the prototypes get 25. Problem for Jakub Kuracik in the Park Motorsport Lexus. Another one of the non-Mercedes runners in this class. I think maybe just coming out of the pits there and letting by a couple of cars on hot laps at the moment. It's very important not to get in the way of drivers who are on a hot lap, and Niboglovsky running very wide through the final couple of corners there, decides to bring the AOT Turtle Beach Mercedes into the pits. Well, the PMO Endurance Team Red, as well as the Strefa Racing Team 709, two of the teams that are very much outside the bubble, and they're looking like they're going to be going for another run very soon, just bringing the cars into the pits. Of course, this being a qualifying session, you cannot just escape off the track to return to the pits unless there's some mitigating factor. You have to use the pit entry to make your way back in there. So let's keep an eye then on the provisional pole-sitting car. Daniel Domansky in the FNLRT Mercedes. Look at how much curb he is taking through the S's. Supreme confidence there through that very scintillating part of the track. This left-hander and the following right and left, one of the more difficult sections of the circuit from my experience. You've really got to try and keep the weight on the fronts, but you can't afford to get the car too unstable across the crest like that. Unfortunately, that will have ruined the run down to this hairpin. Let's see if Domansky will be able to get the exit he needs coming out of this very slow corner onto the back straight at Circuit of the Americas. Massive, massive straight, this one. Absolutely love seeing cars come down here at full speed to what will be one of the prime overtaking opportunities tomorrow. This very slow corner coming into the stadium section. Manages to slow down just fine and absolutely nail the turn in, apex, and exit for that matter too. Now he's just got to try and get the line right through here. There's a lot of curb being used indeed. I'm still not too sure what race control is going to say about the track limits from some of these teams. COTA is, of course, a circuit where you can gain a massive advantage by running off the circuit, and so I think things like real penalty are going to be getting an absolute workout today. The real penalty plugin, of course, a must if you're running a high-profile Assetto Corsa Endurance League, but almost collecting the wall on the way into the pits there. That'll be interesting indeed for the pole-sitting car. Gorka, meanwhile, for Cubic System, out of the final corner, 6/10 behind. Now make that 2/10 behind. What an improvement on that lap. Massive job there for Cubic System. They're working themselves very nicely indeed. And the number 1 Apex 1 entry is also improved too, 4/10 behind the current pole time at the moment. Question is, where do you find that time if you want to get onto that provisional pole position? You know, me being a bit of a conservative driver myself when I am racing, I would just like to be aiming for top 5. As long as I beat the 5th place time, I'm all good. But we've seen how competitive this GT3 field has been in previous rounds of Season 5. So they want to try and maximize those margins. Problem there for Kacper Pietrek in the race spot Emeritus number 46. Not quite getting the exit that he needed for the run into the stadium section, but he'll commit to the rest of this lap, I'm sure. Try and improve 1.8 seconds behind provisional pole. If he wants to break into the top 5, well, he's going to have to gain nearly a second. That's an absolutely mammoth task, but Circuit of the Americas is a very long track. There's plenty of places to find that time. He will commit to the end of the lap here, potentially coming around to start a hot lap. So on board across the start-finish line we come, and up into turn 1, very difficult braking zone indeed. Let's flick ahead a little bit to the Skigalka One Vision Endurance team. The apex of turn 1, so hard to find. There's a few corners like that on the track where it really widens on the way in to promote overtaking. The Motor Reporter 24 Lexus, meanwhile, keeping themselves in the top 5 very nicely. Just half a second to provisional pole. Seems like the FNLRT Mercedes is the car to beat here. Got a solid 2/10 at least over the rest of the field. The Park Motorsports 997, meanwhile, Karachik trying to improve and get within 2 seconds of provisional pole. This is the other Park Motorsport car. They have a Lexus and a Mercedes out on track at the moment, and Bartosz Wilk at the wheel of the 907 Mercedes coming up to the end of the lap. Sim Racing Fanatics Hungary is one of the teams that has been brought in for this round from reserves, and it'll be interesting to see where they put themselves. Didn't quite improve on the time there, still 2.6 seconds behind the provisional pole. The #1 Apex 1 Mercedes, which has been one of the more successful cars in Project Endurance so far this season, looking to improve too. And it seems like the Royal Racing.pl Lamborghini here with Andres Madziera-Gorczka is working its way up the field nicely, making steady improvements over the last couple of laps. Let's stick with them to the end of this lap and see if they improve on their time here. Nice clean run through the last 2 corners. 1.5 seconds behind. What's the time going to be this time around? Across the start-finish line, and not seeing any improvement from them. It looks like they might be starting another hot lap potentially. We'll have to wait and see on that. Only 12 minutes to go now in this session. We are well past the halfway point of the GT3 qualifying session, and the pressure is starting to build for drivers like the one in Team Delta Infinite's Mercedes there. Motor Reporter Lexus, meanwhile, to the end of the lap, and looked like a bit of an interesting entry there into the final corner. I think he was gearing up for the best run possible across the start-finish line to begin the next lap. PMO Endurance Team Red, Oscar Tomala, coming up to the end of a lap himself, and sticking within the track limits nicely. Not going for the pits that time, wants to commit, but oh, the car's a little unstable through the final corner right at the end of the lap. If there was any improvement there, they might have lost it, as there's a big problem for the 666 Lamborghini. Madziera-Gorczka is obviously feeling a bit sheepish at the moment. It seems like he lost control through the S's, which is a very easy thing to do. Those anti-cut curbs at the apexes of these corners can very easily unsettle a car, and fortunately the 666 has managed to get going again, but that's going to be some valuable time lost for them to improve on their lap time. Remember, everyone's going for a top 5 position at the moment, so there's a lot to play for here for the Hyperpole session, where they'll each get the track to themselves. So, P13, the Park Motorsport Mercedes, has made a nice improvement there. They were 18th the last time we were looking at them, so that's some profit for the Mercedes part of the team. And the Motor Reporter Lexus, well, let's see if they make an improvement here. We saw them starting a lap earlier, but they've got a bit of traffic there. It looks like, I'm not sure which Mercedes that is, but it seems like there's enough of a gap between them that they're not being held up too much. Just extend the entry. Got to be careful coming into the final corner, though. They're going to have to make a pass here at the end of the lap. That's a couple of tenths that they could do with. And, well, we got a little bit of racing and qualifying here. It's Julia Obloj for the Move Center Sim Racing Dream Team there. And, well, it looks like the Motor Reporter Lexus did not improve on their time there. They won't be too happy with traffic affecting the end of that lap, unfortunately for them. But they'll obviously reset and have at least one more run towards the end of the session. Domansky, meanwhile, well, Domanski is dominant, I would say, in the FNLR Team Mercedes. That team is looking fantastic at the moment. Definitely the pace setters here. They've even put 2 more tenths on the rest of the field there with their previous lap. Fantastic job from the 222. They're looking mighty quick here at Circuit of the Americas. So the Mercedes AMG GT3 through the penultimate corner here. Got to be so careful of your turn into the penultimate corner. It's blind on the way in. The track falls away from you. It's going to be the end of an in-lap for them. PMO Endurance Team Red. Unfortunately, Tamala having an issue of his own through the S's. He's going to have to let a couple of other cars go and gear up for another lap somewhere down the line, but they are struggling at the moment. Hopefully they'll be able to find the time that they need. The grid racing Mercedes, meanwhile, the 794 with Richard Yashimchak at the wheel, coming up to improve and get into 9th place. They're sitting just outside the top 10 before, but it's still not quite enough to get into the top 5. Their teammates, the Grid White Tigers in the 203, now occupying that crucial 5th spot right on the bubble. The Braun GP Endurance Mercedes will be looking to break further into the top 20 here with Christian Walter at the wheel through the stadium section. It's all about maximizing your lap times here. It's a 12-hour race tomorrow. You'll have plenty of time to work out your position there, but you have to make sure that you get your team the best chance it can for a good result in qualifying first, and that means being as quick as you possibly can around this circuit. Out of the final corner, trailing the brakes through to get the car rotated. Is there going to be any improvement for Braun GP? There is. They get into 16th place. Brilliant stuff from the number 24. It was a very crucial improvement for them, and only about 100th of a second or so separating them from Team Delta Infinite. OC Racing X Lifeless, the 98 with Bryant Perez at the wheel, currently with no time on the board. They've got a lot to improve on here, so not making their way out further on. And the Grid White Tigers machine in P5 has had a problem finding the grass. I'm not sure what part of the circuit that is. It looks like the end of the S's, and again, crucial time being lost there. I mean, the margin is around about, oh no, they've had to escape back to the pits, it seems. Are they? No, they're stopping. Looks like they're just allowing a string of cars to come through on hot laps, but you don't want to get bogged down in the grass, mate. Oh, this could be bad here for Grid White Tigers. Oh my goodness, that's not good at all. They are in 5th place right now. They do have 3/10 of a Squadra Corsa for the last position in the Hyperpole session. That's the way to do it. Get back onto the tarmac. And oh no, he's reversed too far into the gravel. Further problems there. Only 6 minutes left in the session, and with GT3 lap times being what they are, they'll only get one more opportunity for a hot lap here. And they've spun on the way out as well. What on earth is going on in the Grid White Tigers entry? Well, Jakub Borovic is going to finally get his car back up to speed here. That would have been upwards of a minute, maybe 2 minutes lost for them. So it's the pressure's on for them to get a bit further into the top 5, because now there is a new challenger. It's this car, the 217 Skagalka One Vision Endurance Mercedes. Only have to make up 2/10 to overcome Grid White Tigers for the last position in the GT3 Hyperpole. Apex 1, meanwhile, still out there and trying to gain those final few tenths to get up a little further. I mean, they have a big margin to play with. As long as you're in the top 3, and by the margin that they are, I think they'll be reasonably comfortable getting into the Hyperpole session. But they'll still want to make as big of an improvement as they can in these final 5 minutes of GT3 qualifying. Through the final corner we come. We'll see if there's any improvement from the number 1 entry, which has been super quick all season long. No improvement that time around. Maybe there'll be one for Cubic System. Remember, they are Hyperpole session, it's going to be run in reverse order of where they qualify in the top 5. So Cubic System, if they get pole position, will be the ones running last in Hyperpole. As another problem for the Royal Racing Lamborghini in roughly the same location as well as we saw before. The end of the S's, it seems. I mean, you do need a lot of rotation in the car to make sure that you get the best run through that section, but as we've seen, it's very easy to lose the car in that section. No improvement for Cubic System. FNL RT remain on provisional pole. Team Delta Infinite trying to make up some time here, but dealing with a little bit of traffic. The Team Delta Infinite Mercedes currently just outside the bubble of 2 seconds off provisional pole position. So let's see what the 820 does here in the final couple of corners. Might be gearing up for the start of another hot lap here. We'll have to wait and see if they improve their time on this lap, and they actually do. They get up to 11th. That's a massive improvement of about 4-5 tenths. And the Motor Reporter 24.pl Lexus with a big improvement too. They are now 4 tenths behind provisional pole. Brilliant stuff from the 996 team. So it's going to be very close between them and Cubic System when we get to the Hyperpole session. FNLRT making their way out of the pits for their final run here in the qualifying session. One last attempt at improving on that 2:02.9, the only time we've seen in the 2:02 second bracket in GT3 qualifying. Rivals Racing Team, another one of the teams looking to break in, and considering the top 5 is covered by 9 tenths of a second, if you're 1.5 seconds behind provisional pole, well, if you manage to get a magic lap and gain 6 tenths, you'll be right in it. There's a lot of competition here. Grid White Tigers, Skigalka One Vision Endurance, Squadra Corsa Overcrest. There's 3 teams in very close hot contention for that final spot in the Hyperpole session. Apex One falling to 4th place after that great improvement from the Motor Reporter 24 Lexus, and making one of their final hot laps at the moment. 2 minutes left in the session. Still not seeing any time from the OC Racing Lifeless Lamborghini down there in what is now 27th place. That looked like a bit of a slide there on the exit of the S's from the Apex One Mercedes. They'll need to be careful of that. Race Spot Emeritus, meanwhile, up to 11th spot and making that improvement, putting Team Delta Infinite back down to 12th place. Absolutely loving the improvements we're seeing late on in the session, trying to take advantage of the track state. The Kishitar Mafia Lexus, meanwhile, not having as good luck as the other Lexuses in the field. The 775, 2 seconds off, but you see how close the competition is there, and the just outside 2 seconds off pole bracket. We've got 16th all the way through to 20th, all within about 7/100ths of a second. That's incredibly close. And one thing that tells me is the competition in the midfield and the lower reaches of the GT3 class is going to be very hot tomorrow. And there's a chance that we might see some incidents happen between cars that are very close on pace. Well, across the line they come to begin their final hot lap. If you haven't started your lap by now, you are not going to get another chance. As long as you start your lap before the timer hits 0, you're good. Let's see what the Royal Racing.pl Lamborghini can do here. They just improved, I think, up to 12th place there. So late improvements coming in the end of the session, but not much else to be said about the Lamborghini at the moment. I'll just be hoping that they're able to get some more pace out of this lap. Not sure what the running strategy really has been for GT3 cars, whether or not it's just one hot lap and then done, or if they go for 2 hot laps. They'll probably have the tires to go for another hot lap, but will they have the fuel? That's the end of the session then. Checkered flag is flying. And at the moment, it looks like FNLRT have well and truly secured that provisional pole position. Let's see if the Skigalka One Vision Endurance car will be able to make any further reaches into the top 5 here right at the end of the session. They don't. Across the line, there is no improvement. FNLRT, meanwhile, looks like this lap is just going to be a formality. They have provisional pole position and will be the last running car in the Hyperpole session yet to come tonight. Problem for Squadra Corsa over crest. Marek Jagietto is stopped on the back straight there. And it looks like that car will have no chance of getting into the top 5 at the very end of the session. Well, here comes the Voyol Racing Lamborghini, one of the last cars to start a hot lap before the timer hits 0. We'll be seeing some improvements from a few teams here. Will we be seeing one from the 666? Towards the end of the lap they come. And keeping an eye on the live timing as we make our way through the final corner here. And out of the last turn they come, and wow, that's another big improvement there. Not quite enough to get into Hyperpole, but they'll be very happy with that. Great improvement up to 8th in the dying moments of the GT3 qualifying session. Beautiful stuff. Apex 1, it looks like, will maintain that 4th position there. And for now, we have pretty much all cars having completed their hot laps here. So Cubic System getting into 3rd place. They'll be very happy with how that performance has gone for them. Marek Paluch will take the Motor Reporter 24.pl Lexus into the Hyperpole session here. You never know, we could have a Lexus on pole position. Remember, in the Hyperpole session, they'll only get 1 lap each, and there is a chance for Domanski in this FNLRT Mercedes to make a mistake on his one and only hot lap to come later on in this broadcast. It'll be happening after a 10-minute break, concluding the Hypercar qualifying session. So the Hypercar qualifying is going to be up next. Tell you what, it's going to be a very entertaining run here. We're going to be upping the power. We're going to be upping the speed. Well, maybe not upping the power, so to speak. They do produce about the same amount of power as a GT3 car, but definitely more speed. The prototypes are way lighter, more downforce. There's going to be a lot to play for in the prototype class, especially considering a few developments for some of the top teams, which we will get into when that session starts. But that will indeed conclude the GT3 session, and that's going to be it. So, great results for all of the teams there. The positions from 6th on back have been decided, and we'll make sure that we bring you the conclusion of those battles tomorrow in the GT3 class. Remember, we do still have Hyperpole yet to come. Really loving what we've got here. And now we're just waiting for the Hypercar session to go up. This is really a fantastic circuit to watch cars go around in qualifying. It's a very challenging track, Circuit of the Americas. So much can be done around here to gain time, also lose time as well. It's a pretty brutal track in places. We do know that that there's a lot to play for around this track. Well, this is our opportunity to remind you of when the race is going on. Currently, we are in quali, but the race is going to be starting Saturday morning, and we'll be going all the way until 11 p.m. or so, Central European summertime. So make the conversion however you will for your local time zone. That's when it's going to go live. And there's a lot of cars that will be taking to this start. Project Endurance, one of Assetto Corsa's premier endurance leagues, with the Hypercar class using the RSS Bayer Hybrid V8. You know, this one car here has actually proven to result in some of the best racing indeed for this series. Online. So, little word there from the race director. I'm seeing that cars are filing into the server again. We are about to get Hypercar qualifying started. They'll do a couple of warm-up laps before they get out there for the qualifying session, but we're going to be seeing the times come right down here. Awful lot of pace at hand in these hypercars, and this is the point now which I should discuss. There was some big developments for the first and third finishing hypercar teams last round at Istanbul. The winners, the number 51 Apex 1 entry, and the third place getters, the 99 OC Racing Lopen car. They both have qualifying bans for this round, so that's going to be a huge blow to them. They will not get a chance to get into Hyperpole, let alone qualifying full stop. So we will see them take part in the race tomorrow. They will be starting from the rear of the hypercar grid. Just a few minutes to go here in the warm-up session as the PXN Endurance car tests out the limits of the track there. Was running all the way over the anti-cut curbs. We'll have to wait and see if the hypercars take those curbs any better than the GT3s, but I don't expect they will, because these cars obviously have much stiffer suspension than GT3 cars do. Well, pole position is likely going to be wide open. We've got the GLS PXN racing car, which has certainly shown some great pace. We got Team Delta Infinite and Park Motorsport in here as well in the 81 and 97. There's a lot of potential for those cars as well. But Apex 1 is here and present in the number 61 and 71 entries. The 61, the winners of the 8 Hours of Shanghai, I believe. No, it was the AOT Turtle Beach 91 that won the 8 Hours of Shanghai. The 61 Apex 1 entry, I remember, was actually doing quite well at the start of round 1 of this season, but they ended up finishing P11, or classified P11. So they've got a lot of potential here. They did win the 6 Hours of Hockenheim, though. Their other result being P5 at the 9 Hours of Istanbul. Nyado Bolamente is another team that is making its first appearance in Project Endurance for the 12 Hours of COTA. Kachper Bagori at the wheel of this one here, with a very nice shade of teal over that car. Be interesting to see where they'll be able to put themselves. It's quite a competitive field in the prototype class here in Project Endurance. The Lasky Kirito in the Kirito Racing Esports car. That's another one of the cars that has had a lot of unrealized potential so far. The Kirito car, I remember, faced quite a few issues at the start of Istanbul. They've got a lot to play for here. Every time I look at this hypercar class, it's so hard to pick any team or one car that has been truly dominant. I suppose if you go for teams, then Apex 1 has been the best prepared and one of the more consistent. SD1 Vision Esports, though, in the 117, I believe that car had a qualifying ban for Istanbul, unless I'm getting their team cars confused, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. In any case, drivers like Jakub Tarasuk in the AOT Turtle Beach car will be making their way further up. And looking at the standings here, despite them not finishing the 9 Hours of Istanbul, well, AOT Turtle Beach, they finished P1 in Shanghai and P2 in Hockenheim. They are second in the championship, only 9 points behind the 51 Apex 1 entry, which, as I mentioned, is not competing in this qualifying session. They have a quali ban for the 12 Hours of Istanbul. But the session has officially begun, And the Park Motorsport 97 is leading the charge here. Let's see where they put themselves. The hypercar teams, they've been rushing right out of the pits, haven't they? And now is the opportunity for them to try and stake out some space, get some real estate out there on track, because you don't want to be too close to another car on your qualifying lap. If they make a mistake, you'll get slowed down. They could also provide a bit of a distraction and potentially some aero wash as well if you're running too close. Prototypes do tend to be able to follow each other pretty closely. There's not as much aero disturbance as there is in, say, a high-level open wheeler, but you still don't want to be too close behind another car through the fast S's section. So, coming through the S's at the moment, the 71 Apex 1 entry, one of the last cars to emerge from the pits and get themselves around the track for the start of the first hot laps. Let's see then who was the first to reach the start-finish line and begin their first hot laps here. Looks like the looking at the live timing here, can't quite pick who is at the front of the queue here, but the number 32 is going to be the one to make their way to the start-finish line first. The GLS PXN racing car is the one there. So, into turn one they come. Nice smooth turn in. Just clip the curb on the inside. Don't want to run over it too much, but you can use all of the exit curb. And then through the S's we come. Modeled off the Beckett's S's at Silverstone. Absolutely love this section, especially seeing a car go through here with such speed. And they're absolutely nailing the apexes here. It is a slightly shorter session for the hypercars than it is for the GT3, so they need to make sure that they get their best laps out early. They don't want to be wasting time late in the session trying to gather something up when they haven't been able to set a proper lap. Adam Tomasiak making his way through the hairpin and putting the power down. All of that hybrid energy being dumped out of that corner. And quite a lot of speed being taken up here. So the run into the hairpin, nice and late on the brakes, braking just before the 100-meter marker in these hypercars. Keeping it within track limits through the stadium section. It looks like they've got the SD1 Vision Esports car behind them, unless I'm getting my cars confused once more, but we'll wait and see on that. The GLS PXN racing car, they've got an awful lot to play for here. They did finish in third place at the 6 Hours of Hockenheim in the number 42 car. The 32 car hasn't had quite the same amount of luck. 9th and 10th at the first two rounds and did not start the 9 Hours of Istanbul. They're currently way down in the championship, 14th in the hypercar class, but the first times are on board here, and both GLS PXN racing cars getting into the top three, but it is Apex 1 with Rafael Zoltisek who takes provisional pole position here. Kisita Mafia Corleone in the 891 getting into second spot. AOT Turtle Beach, I think, making a mistake on that first hot lap. So at the top of the field, we do have a very tight spread, again, of less than a second for the top five. And those are the cars that will take part in the Hyperpole session later on. Royal Racing.pl car getting into what is now 9th place with more cars putting themselves up the field there. It looks like the Kisita Mafia Capone car in the 899, now the quickest of them all. Project A car with no time thus far, but that will change in just a few moments' time as the 161 makes their way to the start-finish line. And their first time will be a long, long way down. It looks like they might have made a mistake on their first hot lap. We'll wait for further improvements from them. But big surprise there from Kisita Mafia Capone. The 899, only 6 thousandths of a second ahead of the 61 Apex 1 entry. GLS PXN Racing, meanwhile, the 32, not quite getting the time that they want. 1.3 seconds off provisional pole, but Conrad Bohm with a fantastic opening stanza here in the hypercar qualifying session. It looks like Kisita Mafia and Apex 1 are going to be battling hard here for the honor of provisional P1, with, of course, Park Motorsport and GLS PXN Racing, the outsiders, looking in here. The gaps. Oh, hello. Looks like the AOT Turtle Beach entry has just gone across the line and gotten provisional pole themselves. 149.3. Are we going to be seeing any laps in the 48s by the end of the session? Time will tell. They'll be finding time all the way through this session, but the gaps remain fantastically close there. The top three only covered by 600ths of a second. Beautiful stuff. Petronas Cintium SD team with Patrick Verbovi currently at the wheel of that 175. They've got some improvements to make themselves. They certainly shown some great potential, great competition. The Project A car, meanwhile, Philip Kalij making his way to the end of the lap here, struggling to stay within the limits though. A little bit of understeer through the penultimate corner there, manages to gather it up through the final corner. Now this will be an actual time we see from Project A. They get into 5th. Wow, what a time there from them. I was not expecting Project A to be that far up. Congratulations to them on a fantastic first proper lap, and only 2/10 behind provisional pole. Little tea sip break for me as we cool down a little bit here. Problem for the Metoda Nagloda Esports car. Oh dear, the number 69 having some big problems there. One of the many all-Polish teams in Project Endurance, of course, a league based in Poland. They do have plenty of international competitors, but the field is dominated by the Poles. There's something like 89% of the drivers in this league are Polish in origin. So if you're an international, you are definitely in the minority here. 17 minutes to go in the session, and the Kisita Mafia Capone car looking for some improvements here as AOT Turtle Beach hold on to provisional pole position. Let's see what the 899 can do on their next lap here. They're looking formal on the front of the car, but their pace is anything but formal. It is wild, brilliant times that we've seen so far from many cars in the hypercar class. Keep our eyes peeled as well on the Team Delta Infinite entry. They put in initially a pretty good time, but it looks like they're going to come to a stop here through the S's and just allow a few more cars to pass them. They're on hot laps, I believe. These guys just gearing up for another run, breaking further into the top 10. The Kisita Mafia Corleone car, meanwhile, Antoni Sokolovsky, putting in a time good enough to put themselves in 4th place. They've got a 10th over the Project A car. GLS PXN Racing, the car we were following on with at the start of the session, Adam Tomasiak is looking to gain quite a bit of time here. If they want to break into the top 5, they're going to have to find 1.1 seconds in that number 32. It's going to be difficult to find in a hypercar here. I mean, it's difficult enough to make tiny improvements, let alone big ones, but that is a big improvement for GLS PXN number 32. They get up into 6th place. It's going to be another 3/10 that they have to make up to get into Hyperpole. It'd be great to see GLS PXN in the Hyperpole session. At the moment, we have 3 teams occupying them, and we're still not seeing much movement from the 71 Apex 1 entry. Mystic Royal team there, 7th spot so far. Looks like the times are starting to come down here for the run for the right to run in Hyperpole. The Kisita Mafia Capone car, Conrad Bohm currently on the end of a hot lap, I believe, and well, 0.05 of a second down on the AOT Turtle Beach car. Set a purple Sector 2 on this lap. Let's see if the Sector 3 time can keep them up there, and it absolutely will. 0.2 is the margin now for provisional pole position. 149.1 for Kisita Mafia Capone. Brilliant stuff. The 899 looking incredibly quick here. This is in terms of one lap pace. You know, I always love watching qualifying sessions because, you know, it's absolute balls to the wall, flat out the whole way around. There is a nice element to seeing a long endurance race play out, but I love seeing these cars push to their absolute limits in a qualifying session. So let's see if the 899 can hold on to that one. Problem, meanwhile, for Skigalka Sim Racing Dream Team. Looks like, well, that's the same place that we've seen a few of the GT3s come a cropper. The very end of the S's. You're putting the front tires through so much through that section, and you're trying to keep the balance with the rear. It's so difficult to keep the momentum up. At the moment, the field spread 3.3 seconds. We have 18 cars that have set times, and 18 cars full stop in the session. The other three, of course, being our producer, Slavomir, and the two administrators of Project Endurance, Wojciech Trzynski and Kamil Struzik, the CEO of Project Endurance. Slavomir taking a bit of a selfie there for a moment as looks like Mikhail Dralevsky is in there as well. I don't remember seeing him in the session, but you know, it's certainly a nice crew turnout. Project Endurance run like a tight ship here. Plenty of race administrators here at Project Endurance. So 12.5 minutes remain in the session. We have passed the halfway point of hypercar qualifying, and as things stand, the Hyperpole top 5, they have half a second covering them. Will there be any other teams that decide to wedge themselves right in the middle of that and make this a true race for Hyperpole? RoyalRacing.pl breaking into the top 10 with that lap. They are now 1 second off provisional pole. And the Project A car, well, it looks like they've made an improvement themselves, putting themselves 0.03 of a second ahead of the Kisita Mafia Corleone entry. And, well, you don't need to use any more of those tires after that lap. That was very well done there from the Project A machine. Park Motorsport, one of the cars looking to break into the top 10, and we also have yet to see a real improvement from the 71 Apex 1 entry. Alexander Rogoza at the wheel of the 71, and nearly 2 seconds off provisional pole there. 1.6 off the sister car, the number 61. So Apex 1 would ideally want to get both of their cars present in this session into the Hyperpole run at the very end. On board with the Petronas Cintium SD team 175. That was a nice clean run through the penultimate corner. To the start-finish line they come, 1.8 seconds off provisional pole, and that's going to be an improvement of half a second for them, up to 11th place. As it just seems like a lot of the teams we're focusing on at the moment, they're making big improvements. They're breaking into the top 10, but there's still so much of a margin to that crucial 5th place in the standings. I mean, if you're in the area of the 175 right now, you got to be looking at finding nearly a second's worth of time. And I mean, I just look at the gaps, you know, the top 5 covered by 0.3 of a second. You got to add another 0.3 or so, even 0.4 onto that to find the 6th place GLS PXN racing car. So some big improvements are needed here in the final 10 minutes of hypercar qualifying. Going to get some fresh tires bolted onto the Project A car. What about the Kisita Mafia Corleone car? Anthony Sokolovsky. He's certainly been putting the hard yards in. If Kisita Mafia were able to get both of their cars here into hyperpole, that would be massive for them. And of course, they do carry Apex One branding on their cars. So for the overall Apex One organization, that would be a massive boon having 4 of the 5 cars in hyperpole. But we're still waiting for that improvement from the number 71 for that to happen. Out of the final corner comes the 891, and that will be the start of another hot lap for them. 133, Nyado Bolamente with Casper Bogori at the wheel. One of the cars that's struggling to find some pace out there right now. 2 seconds off the provisional pole time. Is this going to be an improvement for them? It is not, unfortunately, but may very well be the start of a hot lap for them. Actually, looking at the lap there, yeah, Sector 3 was way off, unfortunately. Just not able to make that improvement. They did set personal bests in Sectors 1 and 2. Goodness me, the SD1 Vision car coming up on some smoke at the apex of Turn 1 there. Lasky Kirito, meanwhile, currently running last in the Kirito Racing Esports number 14. But there is potential for improvement there. I don't think that's a representative time from them. You know, I think they should be able to gain the 9/10ths they need to get competitive with the rest of the hypercar field to the end of the lap they come. And, well, that's going to be still a 152.1 for them. No improvement so far, but Park Motorsport now trying to make their way through. They were off in Sectors 1 and 2 on the last lap, but Sector 3 came to them, and that's a mistake for the 61 Apex 1 entry. They're going to abandon that hot lap. They've got to be careful. They might be in danger of falling outside the top 5 if there's improvements from further back. Project A and Kisita Mafia Corleone, they're only a 10th or so behind them on pace, could put them back to 5th place, and then they might be under threat, especially if we see those expected improvements from the 71 Apex 1 entry right at the end of the session. This will certainly be the big move towards the end of qualifying. 7 minutes to go, and looks like a slight improvement there from the car of Bogori there, up into 14th place. Keep an eye here on the AOT Turtle Beach entry. The 91 is certainly looking fast here at the moment, keeping the GLS PXN racing car out of the top 5 for the moment. Is there going to be any improvement towards the end of the lap? Nice straight exit is needed from this section. The prototypes do have traction control like the GT3 cars do, but they don't have anti-lock brakes, so you need to be careful in the heavy braking zones at this circuit that was built for Formula 1 all the way back in 2012. To the inside they come. They were purple in Sector 1, were AOT Turtle Beach. Green in Sector 2. Is this the improvement they need? Oh my goodness. That is an improvement for them. They narrow the margin for pole to 0.04 of a second. But AOT Turtle Beach, man, they are certainly gearing up here in the final moments of the session. Let's see what kind of response Kisita Mafia Capone has. Well, they're orange in Sector 1. They did not improve on their time initially, and they're not going to have many more opportunities to do that. Not seeing any purple sectors being set, but the Project A car did improve in Sector 2 on their previous hot lap there. So this is the bit of a lull in the session before we get ourselves the final flurry of lap times. With 5 minutes remaining in the session. Very narrow margin for provisional pole position, but of course the The times in the top 5 ultimately won't matter. As long as you get into the top 5, then your lap times are reset and you have to start all over again for Hyperpole. Some traffic there at the end of the in-lap, I presume, for Kisita Mafia. They'll jump into the pits and get one more set of fresh tires out. The sister Kisita Mafia car, the 891, looks like currently on a lap, and they set a personal best in Sector 1. No purples from what I can see, but still good to see that they are up there. Park Motorsport as well, the 97 currently on a hot lap right now. They were down in Sector 1, but they're up in Sector 2. Let's see if Sector 3 smiles upon the number 97. Out of the final corner they come. Will this be the improvement they need to get into the top 5? Not quite. They do get into 6th place. Put GLS PXN, number 32, down to 7th spot. But they still have to make something like 3.5 tenths to get into that coveted top 5. So Kisita Mafia Corleone, they set another personal best in Sector 2. Let's see if Sector 3 will be the improvement they need to break further into the top 5, narrow the gap somewhat. Oh, they were down just a bit in Sector 3, but it is still enough for them to get up into 3rd. That's a brilliant run for the Kisita Mafia team. Beautiful stuff. Team Delta Infinite, meanwhile, they've got a little bit more to improve on here. Over a second off provisional pole and a slight lock up there coming into the first corner there. And Skigalka Sim Racing Dream Team, 13th place right now, 1.2 seconds off. It's going to be difficult to find these improvements late on in the session unless they've just been making mistakes. The pace that we've seen from a lot of these drivers is incredible. That's a nice improvement there, up to 10th spot for the number 16 within a second of the top times in qualifying. I think it might be a bit too late to see them try and challenge for a top 5 though. The margin for that top 5 remains at about 3.5 tenths of a second, and we'll have to keep an eye on the cars involved in that. GLS PXN racing car is one of them here, only 0.02 of a second or so behind Park Motorsport. And this current 7th place car has not been setting good sector times at the moment. Looks to me like they'll try and commit to one more hot lap here at the end of the session. 2 minutes to go. They won't be able to make it out for another one. They missed pit entry, so they're going to have to commit. Well, Kisita Mafia Capone here. They hold on to provisional pole by 0.04 of a second over AOT Turtle Beach, and Conrad Bohm now has to pull out all the stops to get this lap together. Nice clean line through the hairpin. Circuit of the Americas is one of those tracks where you don't really have to hit the apexes and the hairpins. There's a lot of varying lines through there. As long as you get a straight exit, you are golden down these long straights. Hard on the brakes coming into the stadium section. They went purple in Sector 1 on this lap. This could be a massive improvement from Kisita Mafia Capone. Sector 2 of 43.2. So, I don't know. That seems like it's roundabout the pace of the cars in sort of 5th place on down. So Sector 1 went really well for them. 29.4. That's a really good margin there for the first sector. And I don't know, have they slowed down here in the final sector? I think they have. Yeah, they're going for another hot lap there. So interesting to see there for the current pole position car. This machine here, the number 71 Apex 1. Man, I'm really interested in how this car's going, because we would expect them to be further up the field than this. They have not been able to get the lap together that they need. 25 seconds remaining in the session. They will cross the line and be able to set another lap after this one. But Apex 1, they set personal bests in other sectors here, and, well, they managed to move up the field a bit to 13th place. But I don't know if they're going to be able to improve on this final lap. Kisita Mafia Capone have gone back to the pits there as the session ends. Time hits 0. and anyone still on a hot lap will be able to improve. Mistake for AOT Turtle Beach. Well, I'm sure they know that they've got their place in Hyperpole pretty much locked down. The 61 Apex 1 entry, 4th place as things stand. Project A, meanwhile, coming up to the end of a lap here. They were down a bit in Sector 1, but a personal best in Sector 2. The Mystic Royalty, meanwhile, green in both sectors so far. Let's see if they put the lap together that they need and they cross the line. They're not able to improve. Sector 3 fell apart for them, unfortunately. They will remain in 8th spot. Actually, Sector 3 didn't fall apart. It was another personal best, but not quite the improvement they needed. Metoda Nagloda Esports crossing the line, finishing their run and qualifying, 1.4 seconds off provisional pole. Petronas Cintium SD team, meanwhile, they are down in both sectors of this lap so far. And oh, that's a lot of curb usage there, big instability. They're going to not commit to the end of the hot lap there. The Park Motorsport 97, we saw them gear up for another hot lap here. Blazej Skurek making his way around the stadium section at the moment. And looking at the times here, they were up in Sector 1, but down in Sector 2. Seems like a lot of these drivers are going for setups that prioritize downforce in qualifying, and God knows you need it here at COTA for that scintillating first sector, but abandoning the lap right at the last moment. So, as things stand, looks like that's everyone done for the Hypercar qualifying session. Project A, on their Project Endurance debut, getting into the top 5. That's a pretty solid run from them. They should be very proud of what they've done here. Just fantastic. Apex 1, of course, getting into Hyperpole with Rafael Stoltashek at the wheel of the number 61. But I think all of the praise must go to the Kishita Mafia team
Server
getting
for
2
OC
cars
Racing is
into
now
the top
online.
5.
Please join.
And now we get ready for Hyperpole. This is where things get very interesting indeed. So as the drivers file in, I'm going to step aside for just a moment to rehydrate, and I'll return in a few seconds' time. But get hyped. It's time for Hyperpole.
Just a reminder, outlap, and after that 3 timed laps, then go back to pits and your session will be over.
Well then, we return to Project Endurance qualifying for the 12 hours of COTA happening tomorrow. Fantastic qualifying session that we saw for GT3 and Hypercar. We're going to be moving into the Hyperpole session very shortly, but a little bit of a curious event happening at the moment. The 98 OC Racing Lifeless Lamborghini was present for the GT3 qualifying session, but did not take part in it. And I don't know exactly what's going on here, but potentially Race Control are allowing them to run a few laps here to set a time for the grid. I honestly don't know what's going on here, but we'll have to wait and see for clarification from the stewards here at Project Endurance. If you're just joining us, I'm Reese Gardner. You might know me as Southpaw Racer, and I'm joined for Hyperpole by Oren Brady, part of the squad that really surprised us all for their rookie run here, getting into Hypercar Hyperpole.
Hello. Good to be here. Yeah, it was a bit of a surprise seeing a rookie team managing to get into the Hyperpole, but even more surprising to see OC Racing kind of just doing their own thing. I guess free practice is free practice, so we'll have to see where they wind up there. I guess you must be right. They must have had an issue during the qualifying. They're allowed to set a couple of laps to see if they can wedge themselves into the Hyperpole.
Yeah, indeed. Well, we'll keep our eyes peeled on Jaws here. One of the two OC Racing cars that have those animal motifs, and well, Bryant Perez, he was just sitting in the pits all the way through the GT3 qualifying session. I don't know if it was connection issues or hardware issues or something of the like, but they have been given a few minutes here to set some times, and I don't know if the other GT3 teams are going to be too happy with this, because they do have some benefit here running on track all on their own. They're not going to have to deal with traffic.
Exactly, yeah. You don't have to worry about making a gap at the start of the lap. You don't have to worry about catching another car at the end of the lap. You more just have your own free space, your own track, your own curbs, by the looks of it there from OC Racing. But yeah, it just has a lot of pressure off now. From what I'm seeing, they had a Steam GUID issue and couldn't get booked into the server, which is fair enough. They should be allowed to do laps, but they definitely have a bit of an advantage here, and they could probably wedge themselves into the Hyperpole.
Yeah, potentially. Well, 2 minute 11.5, and I can't quite remember what the GT3 pole time was, but 2:05.0 on that lap for OC Racing Lifeless. One of the cars that we've seen, oh dear, losing the rear coming into the hairpin there. It's very easy to do. I haven't talked all that much about the track yet, Oren. You know, this track has some massive elevation changes, particularly into turn 1. There's a few of these corners where you're cresting a hill and the car is at its highest load point, so it's very easy to lose the car around here.
Especially with the engine braking in the likes of the GT3s and also in the hypercars especially, like when you're downshifting, you also have to keep an eye on how quick you're downshifting. Like the bumps as well at turn 1 are quite a big factor. You can find yourself easily locking a front wheel, then it can go lock into rear wheels, and then all of a sudden you wind up either backwards, sideways, or scrapping a lap altogether. But especially they're heading towards turn 11 now at the end of this big back straight, which is just so much bravery. And also the elevation change downhill as well really makes a difference in braking. It seems they've backed into this lap anyways. They've kind of accepted turn 1 wasn't the greatest they could have done, but they're going to go back for another one next lap.
Yeah, I didn't quite catch everything that our CEO Camille said on the mic, but I believe they're getting 3 hot laps to set their times, and helpfully, thank you very much, Camille. Just been given a list of the top 5 times for GT3. So in order to get into Hyperpole, these guys need to set a 203.9 or better. 203.926 is the 5th place time from the 217. 202.9, the current provisional pole time for the GT3 class. So if they can get into the 203s, then they are in Hyperpole. The pressure is on. It looks like there's not going to be much of an improvement there at the end of the lap, but I believe they're going to be able to go out for one more here. Really pushing hard through turn 1. I mean, of course, it wouldn't have been an improvement. They had that slight half spin in turn 1 the lap before. But let's see how much they push through the S's here. Hard on the brakes, bouncing off the anti-cut, speed bumps on the insides of these corners. Just keep the weight on the fronts. Keep the weight transfer going. Keep the car rotating, but not that much. Oh, no. Looks like OC Racing Lifeless are not going to have a chance at Hyperpole now.
It was such... It actually looked very good for the first sector. Obviously, their cut-off time would have been a 2 minute 3.9, sorry. And it seemed they made a lot of mistakes during that lap, but the lap's now invalidated. I guess they're just going to try and prove a point. And yeah, when you have that certain amount of laps, of course, we were saying less pressure, less traffic, so much time to make a gap. But at the same time, it's unfortunate when you make a mistake under that pressure of only 3-time laps.
Yeah, and you know, adding to that the GUID issue that that he was suffering from. I mean that just increases the pressure as well. You know, you're trying to overcome an issue and you finally fixed it. You've had so much of your mental load dedicated to sorting out this issue, and then you get a chance to get these laps on the board. Well, it's entirely possible that you're distracted and you haven't quite had the time to prepare, you know. No chance to make any more setup changes or deal with changing track conditions and the like, but looks to me like Bryant Perez will commit to the end of this lap. Unfortunate for Bryant that he wasn't able to improve, but
go at the side
I think
go to pit lane. Thank you.
Yeah, he's ended his run now. And that's going to be OC Racing Lifeless with a 205.0. Not quite sure where that puts them in the GT3 field for tomorrow. We will find out when we go live tomorrow at 11 a.m. Central European Summer Time. So it is time now for Hyperpole, and I absolutely love sessions like this, Oren. You know, me coming from Australia, the Bathurst 1000 top 10 shootout is one of my favorite sessions in all of motorsports throughout the year. And I love seeing drivers get the track to themselves for one single lap. It is a time attack through and through. It's such a feeling, especially when you're driving the car. You have one lap. You have to hit every one of your marks absolutely perfectly, and you only get the one chance, pretty much. As you're saying, the Bathurst 1000 race, getting one chance to just fling it through the tight walls, make sure you hit all your braking points with the bumps, the curbs, everything. It really is something to watch when you see these cars on the limit compared to what they'll be tomorrow. Obviously, they'll be fueled up with worn tyres at the end of their stints and all the rest. We finally get to see how fast the drivers can fling these cars around as well. Yeah, indeed. Those are the crews that we're going to be seeing in the Hyperpole session. FNLRT with the fastest time in GT3, and Kishita Mafia Capone with the fastest time in Hypercar. Project A, of course, getting into the session there on their first time out. A brilliant debut for that still very bare-looking car, but with this kind of performance, maybe we'll see some sponsors on the car next round. We'll have to wait and see on that.
Fingers crossed we get Marmite. Some people might like us, some people might not. But we'll get a few. They'll get a few sponsors here and there. Base livery, of course. And now we get to see who gets to go out for number 1, Apex 1 and GT3.
All right, Apex 1, one of the best teams in Project Endurance. They've got fantastic
so we'll have this thing
runs
called
here
check-up lap.
this season.
Check-up lap in a moment after the session skips from practice to qualifying. So please stay in the pit lane. We'll have this little thing.
Okay, so we're just
the safety car.
they've just been commanded to come back to the pits. It's not quite time to go out on track just yet. We have to wait for the session to tick over. But looking at the performance of that number 1 Apex 1 entry, they are the GT3 championship leaders, and they have the biggest margin, really. It's 19 points that they have over number 31 Cubic System in the standings. Apex 1 won the 8 hours of Shanghai and the 9 hours of Istanbul. Backed that up with a podium round 2.
899. Please join the server.
6 hours of Hockenheim, as it sounds like the 891 is going to be the first car out on circuit from what I am hearing.
I think they're just getting them to all join the session, the 891, the 899.
Ah, yes, so, okay, they're not in, right.
So we'll get we'll probably get the GT3s to go out first. As you can see, Apex 1, yes, they have the point lead, but they seem very eager to extend it at least. So we're going to see some interesting lines, I guess, to try and gain that extra 10th of a second. But yeah, it's all ahead of us.
It absolutely is. We've got 12 hours of racing ahead of us as well, starting tomorrow at 11 a.m. Central European Standard Time. And if you're in Australia like me, well, I'm on the west coast of Australia. It's going to start at 5 p.m. for me. And it's going to be the first of a couple of endurance races I'll be commentating this weekend. But, you know, this is the longest race of the season so far. We've had the 8 hours of Shanghai, the 6 hours of Hockenheim, the 9 hours of Istanbul, and now the 12 hours of COTA. And as I mentioned at the top of the broadcast, this is the first time in Project Endurance history that we've had a Hyperpole session at a non-24-hour race. We had Hyperpoles at the 24 hours of Daytona twice before, and at the 24 hours of
on the
Le Mans
server, so
as well.
I'm skipping the session. We'll have this installation lap thing, and then we will go.
All right, so getting ready for the installation lap now, where I presume one of our stewards is going to go around the track in the
safety car onto the
Porsche
track,
911.
I'm surprised you could read the times that came up in front of us. Of course, you're Australian. How do you read upside down so well?
Yeah, well, you get used to it. You know, 30 years young, I've had a lot of time.
Hey, only a young man as the safety car goes out the pits. Make sure everything's going well, and then we'll get our first runners. I assume it'll be probably the last of GT3 Hyperpole, or whoever qualified 5th. We'll go then 4th, 3rd, 2nd.
This is a moment for you to check your setups and etc.
And the last minute setup adjustments as well. Could be a bit of toe, could be a bit of wing. You never know, you could go risky as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And like that's something that I think I touched on a little bit earlier, but I didn't really explain in detail is the nature of this track. It is a Formula 1 circuit, and it is one that was designed and built largely by Tilke. So it does contain those characteristic aspects of a Tilke track. Very heavy braking zones into tight corners coming onto very long straights. And this back straight here that our safety car driver's coming onto now. One of the places where you can gain a lot of time, but if you're in a hypercar in particular, you have a bit of a debate. Do you want to trim the car out for maximum speed down the straights, or do you prioritize the slower corners like this? I would say, considering the amount of improvements that we saw in Sector 1 in the hypercar session, a lot of the drivers will be going for higher downforce setups. They'll be sacrificing straight line speed for a bit more downforce in these sections, because that's where they really make up the time. GT3, though, could be a little more complicated. They're not as dependent on downforce as the hypercars.
The hypercars have a lot less you can adjust as well on aero. Of course, you can change the ride height, wheel rate, all the stuff. When it comes to GT3, of course, you have a lot more window, should we say, to adjust the front
Safety
splitter,
car into the
rear
pits
wing,
now, please.
and you have a lot more options in that. The hypercar only has 4 options for the rear wing to be changed. A lot of people opt for the highest downforce just because it's a bit more stable, and the hypercar is a difficult car to drive. But the GT3s, you can see some might be hanging out loose, some might be understeering
Track is
wide.
clear, you can start hyper pole session.
There's
Car
so
number
much variation.
217, Shigalko on Vision, onto the track, please.
All right, here we go then. It is time. We'll have cars emerging onto the track momentarily. And the first one out is going to be the Skigalka One Vision Endurance machine, the 217, I believe, in the Mercedes. Very interested to see that our GT3 field so dominated by Mercedes, but we do have that Motor Reporter 24.pl Lexus in there as well. I'm very interested to see what that car will be able to do when it comes
217, try
out.
reconnecting.
Similar to the Mercedes front engine V8 and with a bad attitude. But it just seems to be in the back end of everything through the season. But we'll see what they can do. Maybe they can surprise us, stick it on pole. But it seems like the Mercedes kind of outweigh the Lexus at the moment. In hypercar, though, I favour the BMW.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole
Okay, all good now.
the whole idea being that yeah, hypercar probably a lot better to drive around COTA than a GT3. You know, in other sims, I've had plenty of experience around Circuit of the Americas, and I definitely find it a lot better in a prototype. Number one, it's over quicker. As a driver, COTA's not one of my favorite tracks, but in a GT3, I mean, you're already seeing it here through the S's as the 217 makes its way around its outlap. There's so much more roll, there's so much less grip in the GT3 cars. They are pretty easy to drive, of course, but they don't carry as much speed through the corners, and particularly through the S's, you're going to see a lot of instability from these cars.
They also have the ability to take curbs a lot easier. You see the likes of those anti-cut curbs we talked briefly about earlier. They can take them so much easier and take just a little more liberty as well when it comes to that. The hypercar is so stiff. It's only built really to go on the asphalt, not kind of cut across and gain that extra half-tenth here and there. But the GT3s can be slammed over the curbs a lot easier, and that's what kind of makes it. You were saying it's easier to drive. Yeah, kind of. But they both have their challenges. Exactly, yeah, up to a point. But we'll see. Maybe the best in the business will make it look easy, huh?
Yeah, maybe. Let's see then what the 217 SD sorry, the One Vision Skigalka esports car will be able to do coming through the penultimate corner. Very difficult multi-apex right-hander. This is going to be massive indeed. The 217 being driven by Kasper Skalski. And away he goes across the line. The lap begins for the GT3 Hyperpole session. Let's see what he does here into turn 1. Try and get on the brakes as late as you can. Use the rise, driving the car into the ground to get some extra grip in the braking zone. Nice smooth run through turn 1. A little bit of oversteer on the exit, but you want rotation in sector 1. That's where you get the time. Now it's time for the S's.
You can see here he's going to absolutely abuse the right curb, abuse the left curb, and the right curb coming up here. He's going to get absolutely slamming over there. Keep in mind, he has one lap here. He did a 2:03.9 in qualifying, so we'll have to see how the times compare. He's hitting every single curb. He's going to get right on the inside here, get the exit curb just here as well, cutting 90% of the corner,
beautiful.
but just enough to
Number
keep it
1,
on the
Apex
track.
1 onto the track, please.
Yeah,
And now
that
they're
was
sending out the next
beautiful.
car as well. Wow.
Yep.
A lot of commitment.
Yeah, I love it when I see drivers nail the exit of that SS section. It's so satisfying when you get it right. Well, now he has a moment to rest. Sector 1 is done, and currently, well, his Sector 1 times looking pretty good. 34.2 is the Sector 1 time to beat there. So keep these numbers in mind. There's a lot to play for around one single lap of Circuit of the Americas. Now for the very slow stadium section, inspired by Hockenheim and designed by motorcycle racer Kevin Schwantz. This is one of the most difficult parts of the circuit, particularly this corner. You just want to get on the power, you want to get out of the corner, but you need to delay the exit. The track narrows up a little bit, and you need to get the exit nice and straight. His Sector 2 time, a 49.357. Again, I'll be noting these numbers down, so we'll see what they can go for. But to the end of the lap now. Over the curb, wide in the entry, and the first GT3 lap of the Hyperpole session comes to a close. It's going to be a 2:04.411 for Skigalka One Vision Endurance, and I think that's a pretty good banker.
You can see kind of how it affects a driver when you only have the one lap to go. You can see he's dropped half a second. A solid lap time, nonetheless. He was definitely pushing it. You can see into where the Apex 1 is heading in here in the end of the twisty section. A bit of rear lockup. Understeer through the triple right-hander as well. He was definitely giving it a go. We'll have to see what the Apex 1 does though for another reference.
Yeah, indeed we will. Well, here we go then. The championship leaders in the GT3 class for Project Endurance Season 5. 2 wins on the board and 1 third place. Their main championship rivals being the Cubic System Mercedes, which was not able to get into the top 5. 3 second places on the trot for them. Here we go then. Marcin Rybachuk in the Apex 1 number 1 into turn 1 here at Circuit of the Americas. Again, we'll have to have a couple of goes on the way in there. Couldn't quite pick his turn in, but it looks like a much smoother exit than we saw for the 217.
A lot smoother on exit. You can see he was able to get the power on earlier without the car starting to over-rotate through the first sector then. Not taking as much curb as the 217. Oh, and a bit of a slide there, and he's going to miss the next apex, so he's going to have to try and recover it through the next 2 sectors. We'll see what kind of run he gets out of here at a turn 9. Now, it's just not in the front end.
41
he's
onto
gonna
the track
bound
with
surely.
Cubic System.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that one. Sector 1 time for Apex 1 is also a 34.2, but it's a couple of hundredths down on Skigalka One Vision Endurance. So hopefully for Marcin Rybachuk, he'll be able to make his way a little further into the lap and make an improvement in the second sector. The Sector 2 line should be coming up very shortly on the way into the stadium section. It's a nice smooth run through here. Just delay the turn in, just keep it smooth on the inputs. And wow, purple in Sector 2, 49.1. He's put 2/10 on 217.
See there again, same as the 217, just getting really unsettled at the rear. He's going to take as much curb in the exit or on the entry as he can, get a bit smoother. Definitely a bit smoother than the 217, managed to keep it a bit tighter almost. Final 2 corners coming up. This is where you don't want to lose the lap. He's going to just about keep on track limits. We'll have to see that from an external view. Last corner then, get the exit as quick as he can, running out as wide as he can, and it's faster.
Pull over to the side and
2:03.8.
go back to pit.
My
Thank you.
God, that's a 6/10 gap that he's built. That's incredible stuff from Marcin Rybachuk. And yeah, I mean, it looked like he wasn't pushing too much in Sector 1, but sometimes it's the laps that look slow that are the fastest. And well, I'll correct myself from earlier. Cubic System, in fact, did make it into Hyperpole. I don't know why I didn't see them in the session beforehand, but Cubic System, being Apex One's main championship rivals, they'll be looking at that 2:03.8, and they'll be thinking, goodness me, what a task I've got ahead of me.
Yeah, it's a big hill to climb, especially when your #1 championship rival has set down the marker. We'll have a look here. They've already been faster than them in normal qualifying, so they're thinking, all right, we can probably do a bit better than that. So we'll have to see. Apex One only 3/10 off what they did in normal qualifying, but we'll see what Cubic System gets out of the lap.
Nice run through the final corner. Away we go then for Szymon Górka. And the run begins. Build up the speed, try and pick your braking point. Those brake markers on the way into turn 1, a long way off the circuit. They're hard to see. That's a smooth run out of the first turn. Didn't quite take as much curb on the exit as we've seen from the other two cars we've seen so far. What's the run like through the S's then? How aggressive is he going to be over the anti-cuts? He's actually avoiding them, interestingly, for the most part. Did monster the curb in those last couple of turns, but overall, this is looking like a bit of a safe lap so far.
That's all you really need. You've already made it to the top 5. There's no point in, well, you say that. There's not really much point in spinning the car.
Onto the track, please.
You want to keep it on the track for the most part, but again, you only have one lap to try and get yourself an extra few free positions, rather. They looked a lot cleaner out of turn 1, so maybe this is the way they've been doing it all the time.
Very nice exit coming onto the back straight, actually. It looked like that's the most curb we've seen used. Yes, he was a little bit wider out of the corner, but potentially carried a few kilometers an hour more speed onto the straight, and he only has half the car on the actual racetrack for the entirety of the straight. Górka is absolutely pushing it here, and into the stadium section he comes. A little bit jerky movement, but that's more internet latency than anything else. We'll see what the time is like so far. The Cubic System car has gone purple in both sectors. 34.1 for Sector 1, 48.9 for Sector 2. It looks like, yeah, this is going to be a massive lap from the Cubic System, number 31. So out of the penultimate corner he comes. And just one more brake and throttle application to go to the line. This is probably going to be the new provisional pole position. It will be 2:03.3. My lord, massive lap from that.
Wow. So they actually, I think they actually beat their qualifying time by 9,000ths of a second. So yeah, Cubic System on it. That's the 4/10 over Apex One. Wow, it really. Oh, okay. Ignore my confusion. Another reporter having a bit of issue when it comes to latency, but at least they're the only car out on track, so we'll see what they can do. But wow, 2:03.3. That's the gauntlet.
Yeah, certainly is. And let's see here if the Motor Reporter 24.pl, the one Lexus that has made it into Hyperpole, will be able to pick up that gauntlet and then throw it down themselves. This has looked like a very fast car so far. As you mentioned, Oren, similar format to the Mercedes, front engine V8, rear wheel drive, and I think this is one of the more striking liveries of the field. I always like watching this 996 go around. Some beautiful lines on that livery, but we're not going to be focusing too much on the look of the car here. We're going to be looking at how fast it looks as the final corner comes up.
Just going to be a big blur of lines. The livery does look amazing, but we're going to have to see the exit here. It's very hard to judge with the latency at the moment, but here they go. They're on their own. They don't have to worry about anybody behind them, in front of them. They're going to look up at that black box board up there in your top right of your screen. They're going to brake as hard as they can, downshift as quickly as possible, and get the car rotating to turn 1. Nice and smooth on exit. Maybe a little bit of a snap, taking more curve than Cubic System did. Now as inside as possible as they head towards the S's section.
Yeah, they absolutely monstered turn 1, didn't they? It looked like a great turn in there, and, well, the latency isn't doing us any favors here, but I can tell it's looking like a pretty clean first sector from them. Tiny bit of oversteer, though, as they try and line up for the final few turns of this section. Take as much curb as you dare. Actually, not all that much in the last right-hander, but a smooth run so far. Sector 1, though, 34.158. That's interesting from them. Let's see what they can do in Sector 2. That's only a few hundredths of a second slower than Cubic Systems' purple first sector. So, a lot to play for on this lap.
You can see the driver's going to aim for around the 150 board, just after, maybe the 125 mark. He's going to slam on the brakes. Brake disc will glow. He's going to try and get into the corner as quick as possible. He's only a few hundredths off Cubic System, who we stood back in awe when they did that lap, try and just wrestle the car through here. Similar to Mercedes, bit of oversteer, very difficult to get the traction out of that corner. He's going to go for a tighter line, get the later apex out of the tight, twisty go-kart section, and now he's going to aim for the left-hand curb. Oh, is he? He's not taking as wide an exit or wide an entry as Cubic System, but he's going to aim for those inside curbs. Get as much grip as possible. We'll see when he comes up to the second last corner how much curb he uses. Hit the inside curb. He's going to keep it just on track limits, but he's going to bail the lap. I think he invalidated it in Sector 1.
Yeah, oh dear, he did, yeah. I mean, the sector times are showing up as red on the live timing, so unfortunate for them. They do managed to get a time on the board, but man, 12 seconds off. That's not good at all for the Motor Reporter 24.pl car. Yeah, they were a lot slower in Sector 2 as well. It was about half a second slower in Sector 2, so no official time in Hyperpole there for the one and only Lexus. They will start 5th, I believe. Now, we keep an eye on F and LRT, the last of our GT3s to set a time here. Sorry, the second last of the GT3s, I believe. Oh no. Yeah,
final GT3.
Yeah, final. Yeah, sorry, the live timing was confusing me a little bit. All right, this was the car that was easily the fastest in GT3 in normal qualifying. It is time to see what they can bring out here in the 222. Daniel Domanski, he knows this circuit like the back of his hand, it seems. Into turn 1 he comes, and that's a nice smooth line in and out. Good start to the lap.
Yeah, because we can see how much curb he's he's going to use. It seems like the faster cars didn't use as much of the anti-cut curbs. He's doing the same, taking a good bit in the final left hand, the final right hander, keeping a bit tighter to the inside as well. Make sure you don't go over the track limits. Send it through the next corner, but a bit of a wiggle. Might have been the rear stepping out under the braking. Tighter to the inside, going to absolutely mash the exit curb, keep it on track limits just about, and it seems like it's going well so far.
Yeah, Sector 1 is purple, 33.9. That is the first Sector 1 time in the 33-second bracket that we've seen in Hyperpole. So this is already looking like a fantastic lap from Daniel Domanski. Let's see then what it's like in Sector 2. It's all about the run down the back straight here and nailing your braking application into the stadium section. So hard on the brakes here, using the ABS of the Mercedes GT3 to its full effect. And Sector 2 is also purple, 48.955. That's only a few thousandths of a second quicker than the Cubic System 31, but tell you what, the end of this lap is going to be absolutely brilliant.
It's going to be crucial as well. They have a 10th and a half advantage. It looks like they also got a bit of a slide to the end of the go-kart section. We'll see when they come up. They're using a lot more curb on the entry to the penultimate corner. We're going to see how much liberties they take, keeping it on track limits into the final corner. Brake hard, brake late, get the exit, power down, all the way to the line, and it's going to be Pole.
Pull
by
over to the side and use back
1/10.
the pitch. Thank you.
Wow. Yeah,
Thank you,
they
GT3
lost some of
for
that
Hyperpole.
margin there in Sector 3, but it was enough. FNLRT are going to be starting on pole in GT3 for the 12 hours of COTA tomorrow. Beautiful stuff from that Mercedes. A very well-prepared car indeed. But now we see the pressure coming up for you, Oren. This is your team here with Project A, Luca Andretta at the wheel of this car for the run in Hyperpole. Managing to get into the top 5. Well, let's see what they can do when they've got the track to themselves.
Unfortunately, I have made a bet with Sir Luca Andretta, so I'm hoping he doesn't get pole. But at the same time, I'm hoping he gets pole because he's in my team, but I just don't want to fulfill the bet. He's going to come to the last corner. He's going to blast the ERS. High deployment. These cars, of course, have deployment apart from the unlike the GT3s, and he's going to blast into turn 1 right here.
Yeah, look at the speed that he carries. The hypercar results from qualifying. Well, Project A's time was about a 149.4. 149.169 is the provisional pole time from the Kisita Mafia Capone car. And remember, they only managed to get that by 0.04 of a second over AOT Turtle Beach. This is looking like a nice clean run through the first sector for Luca Andretta, using all the curb and then some at the very end of the section. That's one of those places where you can afford to take maximum curb. 29.787 is the Sector 1 time. So that's the benchmark that everyone else has to beat.
Solid first sector. You can see a bit squirrely here and there with the car. It's hard to get the tyres into the right window. On the first lap, he's going to blast down here. Hopefully aim for as late as possible. He's going to take some curb in the entry as well. Braking. Get it in. The main problem is not the braking. It's mainly getting into the corner without the rear stepping out. Under the downshifts, as he goes into the middle sector, it's so hard in these hypercars. They're so heavy and they're so aggressive as well. He's going to try and slam it into the final part of the go-kart section. Keep him mid of the track, try and blast the ERS on the way out and make sure that he gets the right entry into the fast triple right-hander. We're missing the apex a bit. He's a bit wide, but he's going to come back and get a later apex and hopefully use as much curve as he can on the entry into the penultimate corner. Here he goes. Take as much track liberties as he can. Just about keeping on to think. Final corner. Blast it off. Blast all the energy that you can. Get out of there and flat to the line. And it's going to be a 1 minute 49.5, about where they were in qualifying.
Yeah, indeed. Well, that was a good first lap there from the Project A entry, 161. They'll be hoping that that time stands, and they'll have mistakes being made by the other hypercar competitors. Well, the next ones up here are AOT Turtle Beach in the number 91. Jakub Tarasuk is the one at the wheel of this car, and he put in some fantastic improvements in regular qualifying. Let's see what he can do on this particular hot lap. Well, currently on an out lap right now, but he's got some extra time to suss out the conditions here at Circuit of the Americas. I love watching these cars go through that S's section. The hypercars just flow through it like no other.
At high speed, these cars are just so grippy. They stick like crap to a blanket pretty much. But when I get to the low speed, you kind of see it's a bit clunkier. Later to get in the throttle, but yeah, it's a bit more pressure now as we go down and down the order for Apex 1, AOT Turtle Beach, Kisita Mafia. They're going to see those times up there and just think, oh, I'm going to have to beat that. You know, it kind of builds up more. When you're the first car on the track, maybe it's not as much pressure because you're not aiming for a time, you're setting the benchmark time. But we'll have to see how these drivers handle it.
Indeed we will. Well, try and build up as much energy as you can, fill the battery, ready for maximum deployment on this one and only lap you're going to get. Looking at the qualifying times here, AOT Turtle Beach, it's interesting to see that they are the next car out, but they qualified in second spot. I would have expected the number 61 Apex 1 entry to be the next car out, but evidently they've had an issue.
61 onto the track, please.
They've managed to get the 61 out there now. So AOT Turtle Beach out of sequence. They were going to be one of the last cars to set a lap in Hyperpole, but now they are one of the first in the hypercar class. Nice smooth run out of turn 1 and using the curbs beautifully here. Look at how he bounces off them. He's actually taken those anti-cut curbs a lot better than I thought he would.
Yeah, it's very unusual because the car is usually very stiff, but he seems to be taking a bit of a shallow entry to turn 8. Turn 9 then, he's not taking as much curb as a Project A. Has he kept it on track limits? We'll have to see at the end of Sector 2 as well. We'll see how late he brakes here. No curb on entry, bit of a lock-up, but he seems to get it rotated pretty well as well. He's going to blast all the ERS on the way down to the next corner.
Yep, Sector 1 looking good, 2/10 up on Project A at the moment. Fastest Sector 1 time so far. You see in the background the 61 Apex 1 entry making its way to the back straight, ready to start their hot lap. It looks like we're going to get a very quick turnaround here between hot laps in Hypercar. But now Jakob on his way through the stadium section. Just put the power down nice and smooth. Sector 2 looking good as well, a 43.3, which is pretty similar to what we saw from Project A. He's still up by about a 10th or so on the 161. Into the final corner he comes, and I would expect this will be a faster time, but we've been surprised before. We could be surprised again. Turtle Beach, though, no surprise. They are up on top and a 36.3. They managed to get all of that time in Sector 1, pretty much. It was a lot closer through Sectors 2 and 3.
29.177. They managed to beat their original qualifying time, which is unusual for this Hyperpole session, it seems, but easily possible in these hypercars because you usually have so much time in pocket. They're so hard to get the lap time nailed down, but it seems that AOT Turtle Beach have managed to nail it and go quicker.
Indeed. The Kisita Mafia 891 out on track at the moment. I see that the 61 Apex 1 car, I think, has started their lap. Looks like a 29.9 for Apex 1 there. I'm not too sure what's going on here. It seems like the hypercars are running a little bit out of order here. We've got 2 cars out on track at the moment. Kisita Mafia coming around to start their lap here as the Apex 1 entry is on its... Well, actually, no, that's the end of a hot lap there for Kisita Mafia Corleone. I'm not too sure what's going on here. I think there's been a bit of confusion as to the releasing of cars. But Kisita Mafia putting down a good time there. They were purple in Sector 2.
Yeah, that's a bit strange. We kind of joined halfway between 2 hot laps, but nonetheless, solid lap. They put themselves second provisionally. Apex 1 now, I believe they're on a hot lap.
Yeah, I believe they are, but Sector 2 is showing up red, so I don't know if they're going to commit to the end of this lap.
So that means our last team, Kisita Mafia Capone, has a guaranteed 4th place if they keep it on the track.
Indeed. Well, Apex 1's going to bring it into the pits. Track limits violation, I believe, in Sector 2. So this is going to be the end very shortly of the hypercar qualifying session. It looks like they're currently on the outlap. So we'll see where they end up putting themselves. AOT Turtle Beach putting down a really good time there, and you know, I was honestly expecting that that Apex 1 would do a little better than that, but unfortunately a mistake on the hot lap, potentially some mistakes on the admin side as well, getting these cars out of order and not quite you know, syncing up one hot lap at a time. But regardless, we've still gotten some great performances in this session, and we have one still yet to come. The 899 looking very fast indeed. Let's see if they have what it takes to take pole position for the 12 hours of COTA.
We were seeing the time from AOT Turtle Beach was 8 thousandths slower than the original pole position for qualifying time, but Keisha and Mafia have to get this pole if they want to just retain what they had in qualifying, braking deep and late into turn one. A bit of a locker from the front, bit sideways around, but they're going to try and recover it. Oh, a bit of a snap. That could be the end of it. We'll have to see at the end of sector one. They're going to have to make up a lot of time.
Yeah, the hypercars make up most of their time in Sector 1, don't they? So if you make a mistake in Turn 1, then that's basically the lap gone. So Conrad Bohm has a huge task ahead of him here to try and get that time on the board. 149.17 is the time to beat, and the Sector 1 time will be coming up in just a few seconds. We'll see how far down they are, and it's a 29.8, yeah. So 3/10. How do you gain 3/10 in sectors 2 and 3? He's going to have to nail this.
He's going to have to be absolutely perfect and more. He's going to have to beat his own qualifying time by 1/10.5 per sector if he wants this pole. He's going to see how late he breaks into here. Very late in the brakes. He's going to try and send it just for the rest of the lap. First gear short shift in the second just to get it rotated into the corner. We'll see how much he takes through here. If he gets into throttle nice and early, nice grip, keeping away from the curbs a bit, going for the wide line. We haven't seen this one too often in Hyperpole at the moment, but he gets a nice exit from there as well. He's going to have to absolutely nail these last few corners.
Well, all over the curbs here at the multi-apex right-hander. Keep it up here through the last two corners. They were purple in Sector 2, 43.0. They did gain that time back in Sector 2. Is Sector 3 going to be enough? Across the line they come, and they're purple in Sector 3, and that is going to be pole position. We thought the lap was over coming out of turn 1, but Conrad gathered it all back.
899, 91, 891, 161, and 61 without time.
They managed to lose 3/10 from turn 1, it seemed, alone, and managed to pull it all back by just absolutely sending it. Not only did they beat their original hypercar, normal qualifying time, but they managed to do it with basically a 3/10 deficit at the start of the lap. That's incredible.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what the lap would have been if he hadn't made the mistake. That could have been something like a 6/10 up.
Sorry for
fantastic job from all the drivers involved in this one. So, man, we are on for a great battle tomorrow in both classes here in Project Endurance Season 5. Really love the performances that we've seen from the drivers here in both regular qualifying and Hyperpole. But now the team's attentions will turn to the 12 hours of racing to come.
Yeah, it's going to be brilliant, isn't it? We have so many teams so close together as well over the course of 12 hours. It's going to be brilliant. And knowing from racing the likes of Istanbul myself, like, you have 20 of your own class within about half a second, and it's just a great scrap all around. Of course, in the hypercar, you have the battery, you can deploy it wherever you wish. It makes things a lot interesting, keeps battles going for longer. In the GT3, you have nothing but pure driving skills, so it's going to be a treat to watch tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely is. So make sure that you tune in here on YouTube and Twitch for Project Endurance. Round 4 of Season 5, the 12 hours of COTA. Mark those times down in your calendar. Central European Standard Time, you can do the conversion to your particular time zone, but 11 a.m. Central European is when we're going to start off the 12 hours of COTA. Season 5 of Project Endurance has absolutely gone off. It's been a brilliant season so far. Plenty of fantastic racing, but we're going to say goodbye for now here, and we will see you again tomorrow. I'm Reese Gardner, Oren Brady with me for the Hyperpole session. Of course, Slavomir Mishkovsky handling all of the production behind the scenes, doing a fantastic job as per usual. We will see you tomorrow for the 12 hours of COTA.